and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
We have special needs students that cost us $50,000. We get $5,700.
Tonight on Politics Now, funding schools is coming down to the wire in the state legislature. I'll update you where it is at with just days left to go. A gun control bill gets an overhaul in the legislature as well. I'll explain how the red flag provisions will work.
Most of us believe that majority rules. And when you lose by 3 million votes.
And in a TV exclusive interview, I interviewed Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders one-on-one and asked him about a national popular vote bill that was just vetoed by Governor Sisolak.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius and Patrick Walker.
Bills to tackle school funding were making their way through the legislature this week, and now lawmakers have until Monday when the session ends to finish it all up. Thanks for joining us. I'm Patrick Walker. Steve is on assignment up in Carson City. I'll be joining him there tomorrow. Let's start with how the lawmakers plan to pay for the school year this upcoming year. SB 551 is put forward by Democratic Senate Majority Leader Nicole Cannizzaro. It uses $98 million in payroll taxes that are set to expire to help fund English language learners, low-income programs, and school safety. $63 million of that would be used to expand Zoom and Victory School programs. $30 million of that will restore money for school safety programs. That school safety money was a point of contention when Republicans, when it was removed from the school safety budget. In addition, the bill also authorizes up to half of the excess portions of the More Cops sales tax here in Clark County to go to CCSD school police. That still has to pass through both the Senate and the Assembly, however, before heading to the governor's desk. The other major bill would change the student funding formula. That one would kick in for good in 2021. 8 News Now Good Day anchor John Langler interviewed CCSD Superintendent Dr. Jesus Jara about that bill this week and if the school district is preparing if Clark County's school district teachers decide to strike next year if they don't get the raises they were promised. Take a listen.
If this does get through, how would this change to the formula affect CCSD students?
Well, when you really look at, there's a couple things, first of all, it's just looking at the transparency. Right now, there's always a mystery where the money is, the money's coming in and then where does it come out. So now we're going to have some transparency too, so parents will be able to understand where the money is going and how it's coming into the schools. And the big key is really looking at the weighted funding model for students. So when you have, you have an ELL student, a special needs student, a GAGE student, really they cost you more money. You got to provide more services. So now there's going to be a weighted aspect to that. So then obviously there's going to be, with the challenges and what we're facing here in Clark County, we'll look into the possibility of having more money here for our students.
To the layman, that sounds like it's making something more complicated. Is that what we need, something more complicated to fund our schools? It seems like simplifying would make it easier, no?
Well, no, but you really look at right now, where we have students, we get the same amount of money for every single student. And some kids cost us, we have special needs students that cost us $50,000. We get $5,700.
We've seen what the teachers are saying. They are claiming they will go on strike if they don't get their needs met by the legislature. First of all, is CCSD planning for that eventuality, legal or illegal? And B, what do you think that what is being discussed in Carson City will, in your opinion, appease their needs?
Well, first of all, I've had the conversations with, obviously the challenge that I have is that, looking at, as sympathetic as I am for the teachers, right, with our teacher raises, the class size, the pressure, one of the things that was discussed in the hearing with, in the funding formula, you had one of my colleagues from a rural school system saying, well, my class sizes are going to go up to 28, 30. My classes are 51.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a difference. So one of the things that obviously for our teacher working conditions, but obviously the raises. So what I continue to say, let's just continue to use legally what we have within the legislative session to get as much money as we need to for our schools, so then we can address the needs. But we're ready. We're preparing for whatever the challenges may be after session.
Including if there might be a strike?
Including if there might be a strike.
And if you're following along on the legislative website, the funding formula bill is Senate Bill 543. It passed the Senate 18-3 this week. It's now over in the Assembly. It would kick in formally in 2021. We have a big explanation for it on our website, lasvegasnow.com. Well, a bill to create the regulatory structure for the marijuana industry called the Cannabis Compliance Board has passed through the Assembly. Governor Steve Sisolak has said he wants that model to be modeled after the regulatory agency of the Gaming Control Board. It will be responsible for issuing licenses and punishing companies that don't follow the rules. AB 533 has another provision in it that would stop local governments from creating pot consumption lounges until they can be studied first. That includes Las Vegas, which has already voted to allow them. All right, so now let's move on to another controversial topic up in the legislature, gun control bills. AB 291 has been overhauled. It would now create red flag legislation that would let police or family members get a temporary restraining order from a judge to get a firearm removed from someone that the court deems to pose danger to themselves or others. That bill also includes the bump stock ban in it. They are already banned federally, but this would keep them illegal in Nevada if that were to change. Another top Democratic priority has been signed by the governor, giving felons the ability to vote as soon as they are let out of prison. The bill's sponsors say it would make about 77,000 more people eligible to vote in the next election. Well, Governor Sisolak may need to ice his hand a bit because he has gone on a bill signing binge the last few days. Here are a few more of those criminal justice reform bills that will now become law. AB 192, that's the Nevada Second Chance Act. It will allow criminal records to be sealed if the offense is no longer illegal. This one especially important for people who were previously convicted of marijuana possession. And AB 102 enhances criminal penalties for those who commit violence against a first responder or their family members. And Senate Bill 57 requires schools to provide blueprints to law enforcement and first responders so they can prepare emergency response plans. Also, the governor making his first veto of the session, which allows us to bring back the veto tracker from Governor Brian Sandoval's record-setting session. Sisolak used a veto on the bill that would have entered Nevada into the National Popular Vote Agreement. In his veto message, he said in part, once effective, the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact could diminish the role of smaller states like Nevada in the national electoral contest and force Nevada's electors to side with whoever wins the national popular vote rather than the candidates that Nevadans choose. Well, voting privileges for felons.
I applaud the government. All right, we have millions of people in this country who have done their time.
Presidential candidate Bernie Sanders answers my questions about Nevada restoring voting privileges for felons and how he would implement it on the national scale. That's coming up on Politics.
only at Carl's Jr.
Well, we are just about 8 months from Nevada's state caucus, and after a brief break, Democratic presidential hopefuls, well, they're back here in the Silver State this week trying to woo voters. Senator Bernie Sanders held a rally on Thursday at Roy Martin Middle School focusing on immigration. He called for renewing DACA protections, among other things. I was able to get a TV-exclusive one-on-one interview with him before the event. Our governor just signed a bill that would restore voting rights to convicted felons upon leaving prison once they've served their time. Even if they're on parole or probation, they would still be allowed to vote. It's about 77,000 or so people here that would be affected by that. We know that you've shown support for incarcerated people to retain the right to vote. Is this a states' rights issue? Should this be done state by state, or would you like to see something
Well,
at the federal
I think
level?
first of all, I applaud the governor. All right, we have millions of people in this country who have done their time. They've been in jail. They paid their price to society, and when they leave, they have the right to vote. And this is something, as president, I will be very strong about.
We saw our first veto, and it had to do with essentially a bill that would have put us with the National Popular Vote, that coalition. Do we need to go down that path of looking at the Electoral College, and is the state-by-state model the way to do it?
Well, I think, look, it's a complicated issue. But I think at the bottom, at the end of the day, Donald Trump lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. Okay? He is the president of the United States. Most of us believe that majority rules. And when you lose by 3 million votes, there is a lot of doubt as to why you should become president. So this is an issue I think we've got to take a hard look at.
Republicans are quick to start adding up the costs of many of the proposals that you and some of the more progressive candidates are putting out there. What can you say to Nevadans about how their paychecks will be impacted? We know that you would like to see more taxes for millionaires, billionaires, corporations, but how about the everyday Nevadan?
Oh, they'll be a lot better off. Look, I happen to believe that for Nevada, for Vermont, for all of America, health care is a human right. You want to save money? You do a Medicare for all single-payer system, which every study out there has shown will save substantial sums of money. So people will have comprehensive health care, cost of prescription drugs will go significantly down, and we save money. Now, the insurance companies don't like it, and the drug companies don't like it, but the American people do like it, and that's what I will fight for. When we talk about saving money, we have got to ask ourselves how it happens that companies like Amazon, owned by the wealthiest person in this country, Amazon made $11 billion in profits last year. You know how much they paid in taxes? I'll tell you, 0. So we have this absurd situation where Trump gave $1.5 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% and large corporations. That's absurd. What we need to do is invest in our infrastructure to create millions of good-paying jobs as we rebuild our roads and our bridges and our water systems. And by the way, an issue of great concern to Nevada, that we deal with climate change, which is an existential threat to this country and the entire world.
Well, I also asked Sanders about his immigration policy, which he was here to talk about, whether his position now on impeachment after Robert Mueller's press conference has changed much this week, and more. You can watch that on LasVegasNow.com. We also have interviews, by the way, with the other presidential candidates, including current frontrunner Joe Biden on there as well. And on Tuesday, it was New Jersey Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Cory Booker's turn here in Las Vegas. I caught up with him over at Cheyenne High School.
And so I'm just grateful to have everybody here.
For the third time since announcing his bid for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2020, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker is stumping in the Valley.
I believe that there's nothing we can't do if we come together.
In the Real Clear Politics average of polls, Booker is polling 7th nationwide at 2%. That still puts him in the top third of the 23 candidates running.
You know, the 2020 election doesn't stand for the year. It stands for the number of people running, 2,020 people running for the Democratic nomination.
Part of Booker's strategy is to engage millennials and the younger Generation Z, many of whom are just now old enough to vote. Centennial High School graduating senior Trinity Beeman is one of them.
When we see people running for president or their senators and stuff, we don't get to see how they act in person, their body language, and that actually really tells a lot about people.
The students asked about women's rights, support for younger Americans, and gun violence. Beeman asked about climate change.
I feel like the climate change and the global warming, that's really a big issue, and he's really trying to help the younger generations.
The Republican Party was quick to dismiss Booker's visit, saying, quote, Cory Booker is falling in line with the pack of 2020 candidates' costly agenda of absurd proposals like government-run health care and the $93 trillion job-killing Green New Deal. While that may play well with elitists in L.A. or New York City, Nevadans will remember the record-low unemployment rates and bigger paychecks they're seeing thanks to President Trump's roaring economy, end quote.
Come on, more questions.
Booker, however, says his run is about more than just unseating the president.
That, yeah, we've got to beat him. It's a floor. But we're a party who should have bigger aspirations than just removing one guy from office.
Well, the next already scheduled presidential candidate to come to town will be California Senator Kamala Harris. She's announced that she'll be returning to Las Vegas to stump in mid-June. Well, questions about campaign financing.
Hi, Mayor March. Vanessa Murphy, Channel 8. We've been trying to talk to you. How come you won't answer questions about your campaign expenses?
This is not the time.
The campaign expenses Henderson Mayor Deborah March paid back after the I-Team's Vanessa Murphy started asking questions. That's next on Paul. When you donate money to a campaign, you expect it to go to expenses to help the candidate get elected. But the 8 News Now I-Team received a tip which questioned the use of Henderson Mayor Deborah March's campaign dollars and started digging. Vanessa Murphy has more on what the I-Team found.
Hi, Mayor March. Vanessa Murphy, Channel 8. We've been trying to talk to you. How come you won't answer questions about your campaign expenses?
This is not the time.
You won't talk to us?
Henderson Mayor Deborah March headed to the restroom after the I-Team tried talking to her last week. She refused our requests for an interview to talk about how she spent her campaign dollars to keep her mayoral seat. So we tried talking to her at her monthly meeting where Henderson residents can ask her questions. In 2017, she ran her campaign on a platform of transparency.
Well, I think quality of life, public safety, transparency, and economic development.
A year after being elected, the Nevada Commission on Ethics found a complaint against her to be credible. The allegation for failing to disclose a conflict of interest during city council votes. She agreed to probation and training. Mayor March wants to keep her seat and plans on running for re-election in 2021. She's been raising campaign dollars, and some of the expenses for 2018 are raising eyebrows, including $600 spent at the outdoor store REI, more than $120 on skincare products, and nearly $260 at Williams-Sonoma. An email response from her campaign spokeswoman states March purchased Christmas gifts for staff and donors with that campaign money. On February 1st, she said March had paid back 3 of the expenses after the I-Team started asking questions. More than $130 at Walgreens, $60 at Fuji Steakhouse, and $87 at Thai Kitchen. More than 1 month later, the Las Vegas Review-Journal reported it had looked into March's campaign expenses as well. She responded on 8 News Now Good Day when asked about the newspaper's story.
Everything was above board and transparent, and I did provide the Review-Journal with a statement. However, they chose not to use that.
March is referring to this statement, which reads in part, "While I believe my actions were lawful and I reported every contribution and expenditure, out of an abundance of caution, I have reimbursed my campaign expenses related to a trip that included visitation to Panama." According to the latest amended report, March paid back several additional expenses, including nearly $1,200 she spent on Copa Airlines, more than $600 on Elite Island vacations, and nearly $300 on a hotel. And there's more. On June 22nd, March reported spending campaign dollars in Henderson, Las Vegas and North Las Vegas, Hawthorne in northern Nevada, and Gilbert, Arizona. We found similar spending patterns on other days. According to the Secretary of State's office, dates listed here should be the day the money was spent. But March's spokeswoman claims the accountant instead used the dates the transactions were posted on the credit card statement. The question, is March breaking the law? A representative from the Secretary of State's office told us campaign spending laws are lenient, to say the least, but no one would do an on-camera interview or a recorded phone interview with us.
This is just a tough, arcane area of the law.
Francis Carlton is a political science professor at the College of Southern Nevada.
I think the media is doing a good job when they ask of the candidates some really hard questions. You know, how are you raising your campaign monies? How are you spending your campaign monies? Is that within the 4 corners of the law? And even if it is, since the law is so vague, is what you're doing legitimate? Is it a fair way to use your campaign monies?
It appears March doesn't want to answer those questions, but in her statement provided to 8 News Now in March, she urged legislators to strengthen and clarify Nevada's campaign finance laws to provide the public with greater transparency and clear guidance for those who seek to hold public office. Vanessa Murphy, 8 News Now.
We have Henderson Mayor Deborah March's full statement on our website, lasvegasnow.com. Well, important funding for Southern Nevada parks.
This is about bringing children and families and communities together to experience the great outdoors.
A look at what the Land and Water Conservation Act, signed by President Trump, will help pay for here in the Valley. That's next on
on 8 News Now.
Well, we had a face-off this week. You can watch it on LasVegasNow.com. Here's a taste.
I think people are a little surprised by how much of a mess this session's been. Now,
when you say people are saying grim, you're talking about on the Democratic side or progressive side as well as?
I'm talking about across the board.
Okay.
I have never gotten a sense to date of this level of discontent.
Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. I'm not surprised about any of how it's gone this year. I'm not surprised how many things Democrats didn't get. Republicans didn't get everything they wanted in 2014.
Well, you can watch KXNT radio host Alan Stock and Battleborn Progress technical director Mike Willoughby discuss these issues from the right and left, including the National Popular Vote bill, the school budget, and the so-called red flag provision in one of the gun bills. Finally, this week, federal funds will continue flowing for parks and conservation projects. That's thanks to Congress renewing a 5-decade-old program that Nevada has benefited for years.
Where the fishy bag?
Through the eyes of a child, the small Kyle Ranch Historic Park is a place of big wonders.
I went to Cheyenne, Candy Springs.
O'Brien Williams comes here often with his little ones Ryan and Rain.
I bring my kids out here to see the wildlife and the baby fish and frogs at least 2 or 3 times a week.
The city of North Las Vegas renovated this property back to life a few years ago.
Where do you like to go?
Precocious little Ryan escorted Congressman Stephen Horsford around the site to see her favorite places. But she was a little shy when I talked to her.
What is it you like to come out here and see? What's your favorite thing?
Hello.
They really love it, so I try to bring them out here and teach them about wildlife every chance I get.
About $120,000 from the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund helped pay for the park. Congressman Horsford was at the park to celebrate the authorization of $524 million for the LWCF.
And this is just one of many examples throughout the valley, throughout southern Nevada, that the LWCF funds are going to support.
The Nevada Conservation League says outdoor recreation generates $1.1 billion in state and local taxes annually in Nevada and employs 87,000 people. Barbara Hartzell says many of these places have high cultural value as well.
Keel Ranch Historic Park has particular significance for the indigenous community as a home and source of fresh water for First Peoples who were here before it was colonized.
Horsford says this park is a perfect example of the benefit of investing in the cultural significance of the past, the economic value of the present, and the family value for the future.
This is about bringing children and families and communities together to experience the great outdoors.
See you next week.